Hey guys, Zach Draskic here. Just got home after a fun day on the water. Come along with me and I will show you the power of metal baits in this midsummer time period. Please like and subscribe. Stick around to the end and I'll show you how it's done. Got me another something. Big white, maybe. Let's see. Well, it's wanting to come up. I wonder if we got it as a bass. Oh, it's a good bass. Oh, yes. All right, gotta get him in though. Backing off my drag a little bit. Might be a 3 or 4 pounder here. I just got I think it's just 10-pound braid. It doesn't have a whole lot of when they surge like that, that braid, since it doesn't stretch, it'll snap on you. So I always back off when I got a big fish with this light braid. Woo! And I got tiny hooks. It's just size 8 hooks on there. So all right, yeah, it's a good bass. Man. It ain't ready yet. Alright. Barely hooked there. Alright. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's a 4-pounder right there. Yes. Oh. Well, this guy's got a hole in his mouth from a coal tag. This is a good fish, and this is what I was going for with my blade bait today, out deep. Yes! Got ya. Oh, it's something teeny. Alright, well. About 3 casts into the day, so I can't complain, I guess, if they're small to start with. Oh, ring perch. Don't catch too many of these. These are pretty cool. I don't mind this. Just saw a lot of bait fish flickering in the area, and graph was lit up with fish. It didn't look like bass, but there's so many of them. Sometimes there can be bass mixed in when you got like a bunch of white bass or little perch and brim and things. So hey, nice way to start the day. Got a fish. Oh my goodness. I'm in some tiny fish. Alright, surely there's some bass down there eating these guys. If not, I'll catch some of these for a minute before I move on. Sometimes you gotta weed through a couple of these white bass before you start catching the largies. So. But that's what the bass are down there feeding on. Although the shad, the thread fins aren't quite big enough to provide a good meal for the bigger bass yet. These little guys will eat them, and the big bass will set up on some structure and feed up on these guys and take advantage of the dying fish that are down there. So just because you're catching some little white bass doesn't mean there's not some big bass in the area if you can figure out the casting angle and what's biting. This one don't feel like a white bass. Didn't even hit the bottom. Oh, that looks like a largemouth. Alright, like I was saying, sometimes you gotta weed through a couple smaller fish and then you get a hold of the bass. Sometimes they'll be mixed in feeding together because a good spot is a good spot. Catching one species, normally there'll be another. Oh my goodness, that's a good one for this little rod. Got little hooks on here. Oh man, the guy's about to run aground. Saw me hook the bass. I think it'll run up on some rocks. You want to go on the other side of me? I was about to just run over me. Alright. Solid keeper here. Thank you, Lord. Little spoon. I thought I was going to get another white bass, but this don't feel like might be a big white bass. Let's see. This is a drum. Back hooked a drum. All right. Well, it's another fish species for the day, so I guess I'll take it. Drum. Thank you, Lord. Oh, I forgot to hit the record button when I stopped here. Still got him on though. Man, he choked it. Wow. Got another, this is a spot. This is a big old spot. Yeah, shoot that. Oh, man, here we go. Alright, got me a big old spotted bass on that the same blade bait I've been catching a lot of different fish on here. This is a big spotted bass. You don't normally see them this big here on Guntersville, at least, but man, it just choked this little blade bait that whew, same one I've been catching all my fish on. He got it all the way down his gullet. You know you're throwing the right thing when they get it all the way back in their throat like that. I got my pliers here, so we ain't gonna hurt this fish. Didn't get him in the tongue or anything, so he'll be or she'll be nice and healthy. Got a little black spot on there. This is a beautiful spotted bass. Thank you, Lord. Another bass here on this point. The fishing pretty basic. Got a nice wind-blown point here, and the blade bait paid off earlier, so I still got that on. You know, no reason to change until the fish tell me something different. All right, this one will be a little bit short, but these little metal baits, man, they have been killer for me today. Got to be careful you don't get hooked. These smaller fish are the ones that are going to do it to you. I ain't never been hooked by a big fish. Go, another bass. Thank you, Lord. Like I said, before it was a hump that I was fishing that had the wind blowing along it. This is a point that's got the wind blowing across the tip of it. And I'm just working the blade bait up over the scattered little clumps of grass out here. Good guy. Looked like crappie, but let's see. It is bluegill. All right. Poor man's crappie. All right, another fish species for the day. Thank you, Lord. All right, back at the house in the shade. It was a fun day out there on the water, and my favorite part of the day was being able to just keep this little blade bait in my hand for most of the day and put a hurting on some fish. Now, I picked up this little blade bait right off the get-go. I had a bunch of rods with me, but I noticed there was a bunch of shad in the area, and the shad were just about this same size here, and a little blade bait can be very effective in the summertime. If you're catching a lot of white bass or yellow bass, don't let that frustrate you. I did not catch any largemouth today in an area that I did not also catch some white bass or yellow bass. The big fish will eat the little shad as well as those white bass and yellow bass. I've had them chase my white bass and yellow bass in on multiple occasions, and I've seen even spotted bass go and bust and eat wounded yellow bass. So it can be frustrating if you're in a tournament situation, I know, catching those things, but don't give up if you pull up to an area and start off catching them, because there could still be some largemouth in the area. A lot of people think that the blade bait is only a wintertime lure, and that is a mistake. If you don't pick up a blade bait in the summer, you are missing out, I'm telling you. This can put a hurting on some schooling fish, and it can also catch you some big ones as well. I think the key to this lure being so effective is it imitates the size of the forage right now very effectively. And when you have a lot of small schooling bass, and you have a lot of like white and yellow bass that were in all of the areas that I caught my my largemouth in, when you have that going on, you know, not all the bait that the fish injure are caught. Some of them are injured and they flutter down to the ground, and big bass just sit underneath the schooling activity, or will be on the prime spot on the ledge or hump, and they'll wait for these bait to get pushed on them. The big fish are not going to go and waste a lot of energy chasing around little baits like this, but they'll happily go and suck these little dying fish up off the bottom. You know, big fish don't get that way because they're energetic. They get that way because they just sit down there and they slurp up easy meals. So I love metal baits in the summertime. They're hitting my blade bait today, but also in the arsenal is going to be, you know, my jigging spoons, flutter spoons, and tail spinners. These things have a place in the arsenal all summer long, and I'll use them in a lot of places that other people use deep diving crankbaits. I like throwing these because they help you cover water a little bit more effectively. When you throw a crankbait out there, you know, it takes a while for that thing to get down to the bottom, so you're able to with a metal lure blade bait, you cast it out there, it sinks straight down to the bottom. Wherever you land, you can cover that water effectively all the way back to the boat. The key to getting bites today, besides, you know, throwing this little blade bait, was focusing on areas that had some bait in the area. Those little threadfin and yellow bass and white bass, chasing those around, and they're set up on humps and points that had some wind blowing across them. I was primarily catching fish in the 12 to 18 foot of water today. You know, when you get out there, you'll have to see where your fish are positioned. But that was the depths that they were hitting today. The biggest key, though, I think, was having that wind. That wind will go and position the fish a little bit better for you. If you don't have any wind or current on your spot, they can be roaming around, and they could be anywhere around an area. Those fish will swim off into open space and be difficult to target. But that wind hitting your hump or your point will position the fish. The fish will want to nose right up in that current, and they'll sit there and wait for those smaller fish swimming around to push the bait to them, or they'll just let the current bring the bait to them as they sit there and wait for an easy meal. Metal baits are part of my arsenal all summer long. Today it was the blade bait that was doing the trick, because this matched the size of the bait very good, and how quick this sinks let me get down through the white bass and the yellow bass that were schooling a little bit better. I still caught plenty of them, but when I was throwing out my spoons, I wasn't getting anything but white bass and yellow bass, because they tend to feed a little bit higher up in the water column, and the school will be spread out vertically, and that gives them that much more time to hit it as this thing is slowly fluttering to the bottom. But if I was in an area that I didn't have to worry about the white bass or yellow bass, the other baits might have been a little bit of a bigger player. Now I'll pick up my spoons when they're not holding quite as tight to the bottom. The flutter spoon, when they're really suspended up, or if they're a little bit shallower, that's when I'll break that out. And you can use that same retrieve that you saw me doing with the blade bait, that little lift and drop. You can also work in a little bit of a hair jig retrieve, where you cast this thing out, let it hit the bottom, or let it flutter down to the depths where you think the fish are, and then pump your reel handle 4 or 5 times, and then give it slack again. And that hair jig retrieve for a lot of different lures is very effective. So definitely give that a try. The jigging spoon I'll use if they are in deeper water and not suspended up quite as high. You can get right over top the fish, but you don't necessarily have to. A lot of people think you got to camp right on top of the school with the jigging spoon. You can flip it out, 30 to 50 feet and not have any kind of issue. I catch plenty of fish doing that. And if you look, I always make sure I add a stinger hook on my spoons. 1, to increase the hookup percentage, but 2, you will get a lot of doubles if you set your baits up like this. So if your spoons don't come with a stinger hook, add one on, and thank me when you reel in 2 at a time. The last metal bait that's in my arsenal in the summertime is a little tail spinner here. Tail spinner imitates a small bait fish very well, and I'll use it in the same situations as those other 2 baits. I feel it's a little bit more versatile, because you can go and you can have your rod tip up, reel it faster for those fish that are up higher in the water column or sitting shallower, and you can still let it sink down to the bottom and yo-yo it for those deeper fish, or the fish that are positioned a little bit tighter to the bottom. I'll normally go and have a clip on my rod that has these lures on, so I can go and I can experiment and see which vibration that they're wanting the most. You'll find when you're out there that sometimes the fish will prefer one or the other. And when I was out there today, they definitely seemed to prefer the blade bait a little bit more, although I caught fish on all of these lures today. Now we talked about wind-blown areas and when I would use these different baits. The last thing you want to consider with these metal baits is if you don't set the hooks up correctly, you'll be very frustrated, disappointed very quickly. For my spoons, I'm trying to use a more of a round bend style hook. I like the Ryugis with the slick coating, and I add a stinger hook. You don't want EWG hooks on your spoon, because you get a lot of slashing bites. Now for the blade baits, I normally use round bend, but you can use EWG style hooks. They tend to hit this pretty good. For my tail spinners, I always change them out to the EWG style, because this is such a small, compact profile. The fish get it in their mouths very well. But since you only have one hook on here, and this is a heavy bait, this is 3/4 of an ounce for this tiny little package here. If you don't use EWGs and they jump, you are going to lose the fish just about every time. So go and make sure you have some good, I use short shank EWGs so I can get the biggest hook possible on this little package here, and that'll definitely save you some headache. I normally use braid to a leader. If you're using braided line, always use a leader. That'll help you get more fish in as well. Either mono or fluorocarbon, I don't feel it really matters too much with these. So you can use some cheap mono and save you a buck. And I use my line diameter with the tail spinner to control how deep I'm fishing. If I'm going shallow, I might use a 20 or 25 pound test leader, while if I was fishing deeper, you know, I might go down to 10 or 12 if I really wanted this thing to get to the bottom quickly. So you can use line diameter to kind of manipulate where the bait's going to be running. With the blade bait, it's important. I wouldn't go over 12-pound test with a blade bait, because when you start getting into the higher line diameters, it's really going to mute the action of your blade bait. You're not going to feel that instant response. It's not going to engage when you do the lift. So make sure you're not using too heavy of a line with the blade bait. However, with the spoon, I would advise actually heavier line. I would go 15 to you know, up to 25-pound test with the bigger spoons as your leader. Typically, I'm running a stiffer mono, and you'll want that because if you use a lighter line, what's going to happen, especially it's like the jigging spoons, when you do your little lift and drop, if the line is sinking, when you drop your rod back down, the spoon's going to foul up in your line, and it's going to ruin your cast. So I would advise mono when you're using the spoons, a stiffer, heavier diameter. Like I said, with the jigging spoons, you know, not below 15. With the bigger spoons, you know, you can use as heavy as you want. The last thing I wanted to cover with these metal baits is your rod. When you're using monofilament, you're not going to have as much trouble as fish tearing the hooks out their mouth. But if you're using braid to a leader like me and you have a problem losing some fish, try going down just a power on your rod. Going a little bit softer will help keep those fish pinned. And I would advise going and making sure that they do not jump. I will go and take a knee and jam my rod down into the water, do like they do kneel and reel with a crankbait. I will kneel and I will jam my rod tip down if I have a big fish, and I try to baby them for the most part. When I'm using smaller line diameters, I will baby them. Now if I'm throwing a big 6-8 inch spoon and I have 20-25 pound test, I really let the fish decide what I do. If they're fighting hard, I will baby them. But if I get them turned and they're coming at me, I will keep them coming at me until they swing up into the boat. If you have a net man with any of these baits, I would advise use them. But if not, if they start coming at you with a spoon, swing them in the boat. With the tail spinners and the blade baits, I would baby them and lip them at the side, because with the tail spinners and the blade bait, you're using a lot smaller hook than you are with the spoons, and a big fish is going to tear out, or if you have them skin hooked, they're gonna tear out really easy if you try to boat flip them. So that's your best recipes for success when using these metal baits. Use these lures, fish these areas, and I guarantee you will load the boat.